afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our special session with astronaut Samantha Cristoforetti of the European Space Agency. And first, let me invite invite on stage Jean-Éric Paquet, Director General for DG Research and Development, for the big reveal. Jean-Éric, welcome.
Great to see you.
Talk a little bit about Samantha. She broke the first record. She broke the record for the longest space flight for a woman.
Yeah.
Which was later bested, but she got it at that time.
Yeah. And Samantha, you've done many other things. You do one thing in space which I can't even do in my kitchen, which is a proper espresso. And you really are inspiring many of us. And maybe you know that, but even in Europe's research programs, astronauts and you are inspiring us to have these missions. We have these moonshot missions inspired by women on Venus or women on Mars, not men on the moon anymore. This is old stuff. And this is where really what is happening in space is really driving the imagination for science. So thanks for being with us.
And she became a cult figure, really,
yeah,
with
I'm aware.
Online,
right? Yeah, I'm aware.
It's pretty amazing.
It's great.
Benvenuta.
Grazie.
Samantha.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be with you today. Thank you.
And it's great to see you here. Where are you talking from? You're not in space at the moment. Where are you?
Unfortunately not. I'm very much on Earth. I'm at the European Astronaut Center. That's the ESA establishment where I'm based at. It's in Cologne, in Germany. It's one, of course, of our many sites scattered all over Europe. And so what we do here, astronauts are here, just like myself, and we train here. We've got our medical support, our family support, and all that is needed to train us, but also international crews from the US, from Russia, from Japan, from Canada, from all over, really, to fly to the International Space Station.
Well, so hello, Köln. Guten Tag, Köln. Samantha, you have studied, trained, and worked in so many European and non-European countries. Italy, your native country, France, Germany, Russia. You even took part in the first training drill for non-Chinese astronauts in China. What does it mean from your perspective to join forces in science, and how can science help set aside national differences?
Well, I have to say, at least in the scientific world, but also in the space exploration world, which is, part science, but part technology, engineering, operations, it's very, very easy. I think it comes very easy to us to set aside the differences and really focus on the mission. What is it that we want to accomplish and we want to achieve? And I think probably the scientific, the technical mindset is also conducive to that, because, no matter where we were trained, where we grew up, where we worked, we have that kind of mindset and that kind of training. And that's wonderful, because that allows us to really leverage a much broader base of resources to bring in many more different perspectives. In the end, we're able to do so much more.
So, Jean-Éric, the international cooperation is quite embedded in Horizon Europe, in space and on the ground, right?
Absolutely. I mean, the DNA of European research is indeed to be open to the world. I mean, in some areas it might, in these days, be a bit more difficult to be fully open, but this is really how science in Europe is prospering, by being open and working with partners across the globe. And the best science is in Europe, but it's the best science because it's collaborative science, and largely collaborative with also key scientists across the globe. And we will certainly want to nurture that, yes.
And in fact, that's what's been discussed during these 3 days of Research and Innovation Days.
Absolutely. Right? Samantha, we had, for example, a session this morning on the moonshots of Japan, and the Horizon Europe missions on cities, on oceans, on soil. And my colleagues, which are very creative, suggested for you a title of the session, which was "The Moonshots and the European Missions on the Same Orbit," showing indeed how much Europe will work with Japan, and we will deliver science together for our people.
And Samantha, here's another aspect of space diplomacy. Public outreach has always been woven into the DNA of astronauts like yourself. Through your Twitter account, @AstroSamantha, you became kind of a cult figure almost, right? With millions of people virtually inside the International Space Station, thanks to you. How have these exchanges inspired your own work?
Oh, it was wonderful. Just to see how many people in different countries, in different European countries, but also beyond Europe, they were so eager to help me, help us at ESA spread the word about the mission. And you said it right. I mean, that's how I like to think about it. You take people along. Just to give you an example, I wrote a blog. And, of course, you need to reach an international audience as much as possible. So I wrote it in English. But then there were people in several European countries who would translate it in several languages. And I used to joke that they were telepathically connected with me. They knew before I published the blog what I was going to write because they were so fast that the translation would appear almost at the same time as the original, but there were people doing podcasts to tell the story of the mission. Then there is the whole ham radio community, this international organization of volunteers who set up amateur ham radio contacts for school pupils, and they don't just show up on that day for those 10 minutes of contact. Right. They will prepare them, they engage with them, they talk to them about space station and the research you're doing in space. So it was just amazing. I was.
So you were co-creating with the public, and essentially that is what RNI Days was about too as well, these 3 days. Co-creating, working together, trying to make research and innovation advance together.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like for you, Samantha, there's not much which we can do in one organization or one entity. We absolutely need to share our collective intelligence and then draw up solutions and choices as well. I think the issue is also often choices in a much broader way, and we try to do it indeed around the next program, Horizon Europe, with not only our politicians, our parliamentarians, they of course need to own and carry the program, but we do it also with all European actors in science, in research and innovation. And beyond that, what we try to do in these research and innovation days is also to have citizens being part of these choices. Because I believe very, very deeply that citizens need to help us make the right science choices. I think a scientist, of course, will do the best scientific choice. An industry will probably do the best industry choice. But I think these choices need to be made also with citizens so that society can then accept the outcome of science and really pick it up. And that's also what we were trying to do during these research and innovation days. So very much your experience, I think.
Samantha, you are a citizen of the world and space, educated in top European universities. What does it mean for you to be a European in space? And what's to you is different about Europe's approach to research and innovation?
Well, as it was mentioned earlier today, I mean, I think it's really in the DNA of Europe to be very much open to cooperation. So you are in space as a European Space Agency astronaut, and you're basically, I didn't do the science myself. I mean, I'm not even a scientist, but I was lending my eyes and my hands and, my attention, my time being up there to the European research community. But at the same time, I think we also bring a little bit of a European attitude just as crew members of the International Space Station. I think this habit that we have, we are well versed in working in the multicultural, multi-language environment. So sometimes we also serve a little bit as a bridge between the American crew members and the Russian crew members. We're typically a little bit more proficient in foreign languages than, for example, Americans or Russians. And so we can bring in that experience that I think is very much European of serving as a bridge between different cultures and languages.
Yeah, and who's going to turn down a cup of espresso, right?
That helps too. Definitely the European, what we call the bonus food, like, extra special food dishes that get made. The European ones, they are the most sought after, for sure.
When I was covering Somalia, some of the best meals I had were with Europeans. Italians. There was an Italian chef out in the desert. He was amazing.
Inevitably. No, Chris, thank you very much. Can I maybe add one last consideration? I mean, the European Space Agency is truly exceptional. as a platform for science. And I think it really embodies Europe in a positive and in a more challenging way. In the positive way, it's, I think, amazing, outstanding, cutting-edge science. And Samantha, you're part of that, and we are really very impressed with that. And then on the more challenging side is that everyone speaks about NASA, not ESA. ESA is absolutely the same level, and I want to say it here very loud and clear, and thank you again for having joined us. Samantha, I need to prepare the closing session with the Commissioner and Ministers. We are nearly at the end of it, so I leave you in the hands of Chris, and thanks again for having joined us on the European Research Orbit.
Thank you so
much. À bientôt.
Thank you, Jean-Luc. À bientôt. À bientôt. Well, so let's take a few questions from the audience. You can use the dedicated tool at the bottom of your screen. And let me start with one question I personally have. During the Futura mission in 2015, Samantha, you spent almost 200 days in isolation with 2 other people in an extremely confined space. What does that make you think about? Well, what are the main takeaways from this experience, and how do they apply maybe to the current COVID-19 situation? You had your own self-imposed lockdown, didn't you?
Yes, in a way, but as you say, it was self-imposed. It was very much a choice. It was very much something that we had looked forward to. So I certainly have the utmost respect for the difficulties and challenges that people have faced all over Europe and the world, really, during these lockdown months. Those lockdowns we didn't choose and we didn't look forward to. But yeah, I mean, even, when you are with like-minded people and again, it's something that you chose, it's not to be underestimated how difficult it can be. I had the most pleasant experience. I had great crew members. We had a lot of fun together. But definitely, sometimes you have to actively intervene to make sure that good atmosphere remains. You give each other feedback, and you just remind yourselves that you're up there to make sure that everybody is doing well and is performing at their best. So what I used to tell people that were in lockdown is like, if it's tough, if it's not so easy, even if you're with your family and you love each other, that's totally normal. It's totally normal. It's tough.
Okay, well, that sounds like good advice for someone also here on Earth in lockdown or semi-lockdown. Got some questions from people that are coming in. How does Europe look from above? Asks one person.
I especially loved it at night. Compared to the rest of the world, it's very, very densely populated compared to most places in the world, I would say. So it's very bright, there's lots of cities that you can recognize at night. But it also has this distinct shape, which is, quite fragmented, with all the, islands and peninsulas sticking out, and the ocean, and then the Mediterranean. And you fly over it very fast. It takes about 10 minutes to overfly it. So a typical pass would be, you always come from the west towards the east, and you might, hit Europe over Ireland, and then you fly over England, and then you're over the continent, and then you fly south, and you fly over the Alps and down towards Italy or Greece, which is really like sticking into the Mediterranean. And if there is a moon glint, it's just sublime. It's almost moving, moon glint in the Mediterranean.
We think about that picture of Earthrise, with the astronauts behind the moon and looking at Earth and seeing how small Earth is really compared to everything else in the universe. How much does that bring home to you when you look at Earth like that? How important it is to make sure that we have a planet that is livable in the next few decades, and how important it is to fight climate change, to bring about carbon neutrality, as we've been speaking during these 3 days at Research and Innovation Days.
Right. So the strong feeling I had was of the fragility, not so much of the Earth, because I think the Earth itself is going to thrive for a long time as a planet, but of our species on it, right? When you're in space, you see, especially during the day, what you see are signs of phenomena like geological, that happened in geological time frames, crater impacts and, big mountain ranges and volcanoes and all of that. And it really gives you the feeling of how, human life is almost an afterthought. It really came very, very late in the history of the planet, and it could be over very quickly as well. That there's nothing permanent, nothing necessary about us. And so I think we really have to work hard to make sure that we can continue to thrive on this planet. So, absolutely. I mean, making sure that the climate remains suitable for human life is, I would say, probably should be our number one priority at this point.
Yes. Another question. Are you going to go back to space anytime soon? Ask someone.
I count on that. Yes. I don't have a set mission assigned with an actual date, but it's quite likely, if things turned out the way we expect them at this point, that in a couple of years I should be able to go back to the ISS.
Yeah, because you broke the record for the longest time that a woman has been in space. Somebody else bested you. You want to go back and beat that record again?
Well, that would require very special circumstances, I think. I mean, Christina Koch was the record right now. She was up there for almost a year, and that would be quite unusual, actually.
Are you prepared to do that?
I'd be happy to do it, but as I said, that would require very unusual circumstances.
Yes. I've got a question about whether you have any advice for young girls who want to become astronauts.
Yeah, go for it. That's really the basic advice. I mean, the reason why we tend to have less female astronauts is not so much because they don't get selected; it's because they don't apply in such great numbers as young men do. So the most important advice is go for it, apply.
Yeah. Yeah, because there's this discussion, and we had that discussion here as well, and also award for female innovators. The idea that we got to get more women and young women involved in STEM, right? In science and technology. What advice would you have there?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the same advice. I mean, I don't want to necessarily say that everybody has to make their life choices, right? So if somebody wants to do something else and they believe that their path is somewhere else, I certainly don't want to tell them that they absolutely have to go into STEM, right?
Yeah.
I guess what I'm saying is that if that's what you want to do, if you think that that's your path, your passion, your calling, then by all means, please go for it.
And obviously to be judged on your merits and not just because you're a woman, right? Obviously.
Well, yes,
yeah.
Of course.
Yeah. What do you think is going to be the next moonshot in your field?
Well, I don't know if you can count it as a moonshot, depending on what you mean by that, right? But if we are talking about it literally, like going back towards the moon is really what the plan is. That's actually something I've been heavily involved with in the last couple of years. As I waited, as we mentioned, to start training again for my next mission to ISS, I was involved in this project, which is called Gateway, which is the next big thing happening in human space exploration. It's going to be a small space station, not huge like the ISS. Yeah. But it's going to be in orbit around the moon. And as the name says, it's meant to be like a gateway for missions to the surface of the moon.
How much?
It's NASA. Yeah, go ahead.
No, how much is the race to Mars exciting for you? What do you think about that?
So, if you mean myself going to go to Mars, that's probably for somebody younger than me, I would imagine. So that there are no concrete plans for a human mission to Mars right now. We have a lot of robotic missions in the pipeline. ESA is working on one which is called ExoMars, and in a couple of years it will launch and it will fly to Mars a lander with a rover which is called Rosalind Franklin. And the idea, of course, is to continue to explore the surface of the planet with a particular attention dedicated to searching for traces of present or past life. Of course, very simple life forms, right? We're not talking about a Martian civilization, but maybe microorganisms could be living, especially not so much on the surface. That's very hostile to life, but we are going to be able to drill to a certain depth in the soil, and that might be a place where we could find traces of present or past life.
And all of this costs money, and it is important to have a good budget for the research and innovation that we want to do in Europe, correct? We've got Horizon Europe. It's got to be well funded for that, where there's a vote coming up in the Parliament next month.
Yes, I mean, of course, I think it's people sometimes ask me whether it is worth to spend so much money in space. And of course, you could ask the same question about all kinds of other research and technology development. But, what I always say is, like, you're not like throwing the money into outer space, and you're not spending that money, you're like investing it. I mean, it's the best possible investment that you can do. Not only certainly in your economy, because an economy thrives and grows on innovation, but also on the level of your citizenship. You're going to be able to offer your citizens opportunities to engage in all those topics that expand human knowledge and really the boundaries of what we're able to do as human beings, and the well-being of people, and maybe our lifespans, and the quality of life of our and the quality of our societies. So yep. I think it's money well not spent but invested.
Because a lot of that technology that is developed during space programs serves here on the planet, in Europe and on Earth.
Yes, I mean, absolutely. There is that, but then there is just simply a virtuous cycle of, again, investing money in areas that create knowledge, create innovation, create new technology, and that those are just virtuous cycles that, in the end, foster the well-being of our societies in ways that are unpredictable in detail. But in the big scheme of things, you can predict that that's the way it's going to go.
Yeah, it's like the blue skies conversation we had with Nobel and Kavli laureates yesterday, where there are things that you can't exactly right away connect with practical, concrete things, but it's still worth researching because it's going to pay off someday, right?
Exactly.
Yep. Here's another question from your audience. What was the most challenging thing to adapt to the lockdown in space? What was the toughest thing you had to deal with there?
Well, maybe on the long term, not initially, but on the long term, after a few months, not actually having a shower wasn't the best thing. It's okay. I mean, we take sponge baths, kind of like when you're camping and there is no water. But eventually I was looking forward to having a shower.
Yeah, it's quite interesting visiting the European Space Agency Space Museum here in Belgium. It's about an hour south of Brussels, and you have this mock-up of the International Space Station, and there's a shower, there's a toilet, there's and it shows you how you live. You got to visit it sometime. It's very interesting.
There's no shower in the real thing, though. Oh,
well, okay. There wasn't a shower. That's right. It was just a wash. Well, here's another one. Someone's saying, let's see, Giorgio says, I never feel more European than when I'm abroad. What's the difference of being only with your fellow humans up there? Did you ever discuss Earth?
Trying to understand the question a little bit.
A little bit mixed questions, but he feels more foreign when he's abroad, and when you're in space, and you're with your team there, which is multinational. How do you feel?
I guess maybe what he's trying to say is that, which is an experience I think I share and many people have, is that when you are outside of Europe, then all of a sudden you feel more European than when you're at home. When you're inside of Europe, you're maybe more tied to a single country, and then all of a sudden maybe you're in the US or in Asia or wherever else. and you feel this bond with all other Europeans because you recognize that there is something that you have in common. So maybe he's saying, when you're outside of the planet, then all of a sudden you should just feel like a human being, right? which is definitely a thing. Yes, I would share that thought. You feel a connection to all human beings, maybe because you're like physically like overflying them all the time. You're like, we fly around the Earth every hour and a half, and this orbit is like an embrace of the planet, and then it shifts every time. Every time you turn around, it shifts a little bit.
Right.
So eventually you've covered the entire planet, at least to a certain latitude. And, eventually you really come to feel connected to everybody down there.
All 7 billion of us. Can we replicate ESA cooperation, European Space Agency cooperation model, for other global challenges, joining forces in a unique center of expertise? What do you think?
I'm sure you can. I mean, ESA is of course not the only intergovernmental, super overnational or international organization. I mean, there's many. I mean, right now, I think what we're seeing is a little bit of a challenging time for multilateralism and coordination around the planet. That's a little bit concerning because, again, the big challenges that we face, starting with climate change, they don't stop at the borders, right? So they require a high level of international coordination. So that's something that worries me a little bit. We are losing that heritage of being able to coordinate at a global level at a time where we should actually move in the other direction. We should become better and better at that.
That's right. We need a new Paris Agreement to create that, maybe. What about space waste? How can we make space exploration more sustainable, asks another viewer.
So I think they're talking maybe about...
We've frozen here. Can we bring it back? Okay. All right. Well, that was a great conversation. I wish we could have put in some more questions with Samantha. Samantha, it was great to have her. We're going to have to wrap that up now. We're just about 2.5 minutes away in any case. But our great thanks, grazie moltissimo, to Samantha. She was really great. Great to talk to you today. And it's been my time that has come to an end too, and what an amazing 3 days has been as host of Europe's Research and Innovation Days 2020. In 15 minutes, this channel will host the final session featuring the European Commission Vice President Vestager, Commissioner Gabriel, the Chair of the European Parliament Committee on Industry, Research and Energy, Mr. Buschoi, and the German Minister for Science and Innovation, Ms. Karliczek. Stay tuned for an exciting debate, and see you next time.